The night he left, the air was heavy with rain and regret. She stood by the window, watching the tail lights disappear into the distance, each second stretching into eternity. No promises, no last words, just silence, the kind that burns through the heart louder than any scream. For days, the house felt haunted by memories of him. The smell of his coffee, the sound of his laugh echoing faintly in the corners. She tried to erase him, to move on, but everything she touched reminded her of the life they had built and the one she had lost. Everyone told her to forget him. Friends stopped calling. Her sister said she was foolish. Even her own reflection began to look like a stranger's. But she stayed, in that same small apartment, surrounded by ghosts that no one else could see. She watered the plants he had planted on the balcony, even though half of them had already died. She cooked for two, ate alone, and left the other plate untouched. Because deep down, she believed that one day, when the world had turned its back on him, he would remember where home was. One evening, as the last light faded behind the buildings, she heard a knock at the door. It was soft, hesitant, almost like a memory returning. Her heart raced, but her hands trembled as she reached for the handle. The moment before the door opened felt like the longest breath of her life. And in that fragile silence, between hope and heartbreak, she realized some people never really leave. They just take longer to find their way back. The handle turned slowly, as if time itself hesitated to move. The door creaked open, and the light from the hallway spilled into the room, painting the faded wallpaper gold. Her heart pounded, loud enough to drown the world. But it was not him. It was only the landlord, holding an envelope with her name written in his handwriting. He said nothing, just handed it to her, his eyes avoiding hers, as though he already knew what was inside. The paper felt cold against her fingers. She tore it open carefully, afraid that one wrong move might shatter what little strength she had left. Inside, a single key fell to the floor, glinting faintly in the half-light. No note, no explanation, just that one key, identical to the one he had taken when he left. She picked it up, her breath uneven, her thoughts racing through every possibility. Was it a sign? A mistake? Or something he had planned long before he disappeared? The key felt heavier than it should have been, as if it carried a truth she was not ready to face. That night, she could not sleep. She sat by the door, staring at it, waiting for another knock. The city outside was alive. Sirens, laughter, and rain. But inside her room, there was only stillness and the quiet rhythm of her heart. At dawn, she walked to the old cafe they used to visit, the one by the river, where the morning light touched the water like silver. The same table was empty, waiting. The chair across from her remained untouched. She placed the key on the table beside a half-finished cup of coffee and whispered to no one, "If you find this, you'll know I never left." Hours passed. The waiter came and went. People filled the cafe with noise and life, but no one noticed the key shining softly in the light of a fading morning. When she finally stood to leave, she looked back one last time. A man had just walked in, tall, familiar, wearing the same coat he had the day he left. Her breath caught, every part of her trembling with recognition and disbelief. He looked around slowly, his eyes scanning the crowd, until they stopped exactly where she had been sitting moments before. And then he saw the key. He froze. His hand hovered over it. Something flickered across his face. Guilt, sorrow, memory. But before he could pick it up, the cafe door opened again, letting in a rush of cold air and noise. When he turned back, the table was empty. The key was gone. No one saw where it went. No one noticed the woman walking out into the rain, her face calm, her steps light, as if she finally knew the ending he would never have the courage to give her. And somewhere in that endless city, between the echoes of what once was and what would never be again, he stood frozen in place, realizing too late that she had always been, the one who stayed when everyone else left. He stood there for a long time, staring at the spot where she had just been. The cafe noise faded into a distant hum, as if the world had turned its back on him, the same way he once turned his back on her. The cup she had left behind was still warm, a faint trace of her lipstick on the rim, a quiet ghost of her presence. He sat down in the same chair she had occupied moments ago, his hands trembling as he reached for that single, untouched coffee spoon. It was absurd how a simple thing could feel so heavy. The air smelled of rain and roasted beans, but to him, it smelled like the past. He looked out the window where the city reflected on the river, the same view they used to share every Sunday morning. It was there, in that reflection, that he saw her again. Just a glimpse, her silhouette under a gray umbrella, crossing the street without looking back. He almost ran after her. Almost. But something inside him stopped, the weight of every decision he had made pressing on his chest. He knew if he called her name, she would not turn around this time. She had already waited too long. Instead, he opened his palm, revealing a second key, the same as hers. He had kept it all this time, hidden at the bottom of a drawer, too proud to return it, too guilty to throw it away. Now, for the first time, he noticed the scratch marks along its edge, the faint letter she had engraved there herself. Home. The word felt like a wound. He placed the key on the table, next to the now-cold coffee, and whispered, "I should have stayed." But no one heard him. The cafe had begun to empty. The sun was slipping behind the clouds. Outside, she kept walking. The rain clung to her hair, her dress, her fingers, but she didn't wipe it away. Each drop felt like something she had carried for too long, finally washing off her skin. She didn't go home. Instead, she wandered toward the train station, the same one they once promised to leave together. Back then, they had plans to start over somewhere new, to build a life beyond the city's noise. But he never showed up. Now, she stood at the same platform, the same worn-out bench, holding her suitcase and that same old key, the one he never knew she had duplicated before he left. The announcement echoed through the station. The last train for the evening was about to depart. She could leave. She wanted to, but something held her still. It wasn't love anymore. It was something deeper, quieter. It was the realization that leaving didn't mean forgetting. As the train doors closed, she caught a reflection in the glass. A man standing near the ticket counter, looking right at her. Their eyes met, brief, uncertain, heavy with everything they had never said. He didn't move. Neither did she. The train began to move slowly, the sound of its wheels rising like a heartbeat. He took a step forward. She almost raised her hand. But before anything could happen, the train pulled away, and the moment, that single fragile moment, dissolved into the city's lights. Back at the cafe, the waiter found the key he had left behind. He turned it over, confused, and placed it in the lost and found box, unaware that it carried an entire story of two people who never learned how to stay, and yet never truly left each other. The rain fell harder that night. The city kept breathing, unaware of the quiet storm that had just ended. And somewhere out there, on a train or maybe in a memory, a woman looked out the window, her fingers brushing over a small silver key, and whispered to the empty seat beside her, "I stayed, but now it's your turn." The train slowed as it entered the outskirts of the next city, where the horizon was painted in fading gold. She pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching the streets blur into rivers of light. It no longer hurt the way it used to. The ache had softened, not gone, but changed, like an old scar that no longer stings when touched. The key still rested in her hand. She turned it slowly between her fingers, feeling the weight of every memory it carried. It wasn't just a key to a door anymore. It was a reminder of promises broken, of love that had tried its best, of the part of her that had once waited for too long. At the next stop, she stood. The train doors opened with a sigh, and the evening breeze touched her face gently, as if urging her forward. For the first time in years, she stepped onto unfamiliar ground without fear. She looked up. A new city, a new street, a new beginning. Everything smelled of possibility. She slipped the key into a small envelope and handed it to the station clerk. "If someone comes looking for it," she said softly, "tell him it unlocked something long ago." The clerk nodded, puzzled, but she was already walking away. Back in the old city, days later, He returned to the cafe once more. He had gone to the train station, the old apartment, everywhere that might have still held a trace of her. But she was gone, truly this time. The city had swallowed her name, leaving only silence behind. When he finally sat down at their table, he noticed the waiter placing something beside his coffee cup, an envelope, weathered from travel, his name written in her handwriting. Inside, there was no letter, only the key. He held it for a long time, his thumb tracing the same engraved word, home. The meaning had changed. It was no longer a place, no longer a promise. It was a memory, one that had taught him how to lose and how to remember with grace. That night, he went back to the river. The water shimmered beneath the city lights, just as it had the day they first met. He opened his hand, and the key slipped from his fingers, sinking quietly into the dark water. As it disappeared, he whispered, "You were the one who stayed, and I was the one who finally learned why." The city carried on, unaware, untouched, but somewhere beyond it, where the roads turned into silence and the air smelled of rain, a woman smiled without looking back, and for the first time, the story finally felt complete.